If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Happy Monday to everybody out there commuting to work, driving, just getting up. Some of you, we appreciate you listening to the show. You've found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine, and we need your help to do it. Now, I don't know if anybody's filled their gas tank up because of what's going on in the Middle East, but I know I certainly did. You kind of saw the little uptick in prices. The president, though, saying that if he has to, they will. He's already authorized the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to be used as needed. So that's a big deal because, gas prices could certainly fluctuate. I mean, especially if we do, in fact, have some sort of conflict with Iran. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a drone strike on a Saudi Arabian oil field, okay? And the Saudis have not yet, now from what I can tell, the Saudis have not yet confirmed that they believe it was these rebels, these Yemeni rebels that are supposedly backed by Iran. It's very confusing, right? In terms of any time, and I've always said this back in series, very, how do you know, and how do we know? How are we supposed to verify some of the news that we're hearing in terms of which rebels are backed by who? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's not as if there's some sort of guaranteed loyalty when we're talking about rebels who are, fighting on Iran's side, and you've got Saudi Arabians backing another group. It's basically, in Yemen, there's like a civil war conflict going on right now, and Saudi Arabia and Iran are fighting a proxy war in Yemen. I mean, that's what's been going on here. This is from Yahoo Finance. Drone attack on Saudi oil field. These are just some of the headlines that we're hearing. Drone attack on Saudi oil field seen as Pearl Harbor moment. Okay. Well, I mean, not by any of us here in America. I don't think anybody woke up to the news that the Saudis had been attacked and thought, oh, this is another Pearl Harbor. I don't think anyone thought that here in America. Now, this is what the media is telling us, that other people see it as Pearl Harbor. And, of course, when an American hears the phrase Pearl Harbor, we think, what? What was the next thing we did after Pearl Harbor? We went to war. That's right. For many of the national security teams that monitor threats on the United States, the apparent drone strike Saturday on the heart of Saudi Arabia's oil production facilities was the realization of their worst fears. Based on early reports, multiple relatively inexpensive drone devices were able to pierce Saudi defenses in a way that a traditional Air Force could not, flying long distances to drop potent bombs that apparently set vast portions of the Saudi petroleum infrastructure ablaze. The attack, for which Houthi rebels battling Saudi Arabia and Yemen took credit for, underscored the fears raised by U.S. security officials and experts in terrorism about the rapid evolution of technologies allowing expanded unmanned flight. Now, Adam Schiff, the Democrat, the guy who's the head of the House Intelligence Committee, he was, went out on the shows and interviewed yesterday and essentially was trying to confirm. I don't believe anything Adam Schiff says. Never will. Adam Schiff is a liar. So that's not necessarily, so, I mean, not really sure what's going on here. We have this other headline from Sky News Iran says it's ready for war with the United States after the Saudi oil attack accusations. Tehran says that U.S. bases and aircraft carriers are stationed up to 1,200 miles around Iran are within range of its missiles. Okay. Iran has, listen to this, Iran has dismissed U.S. accusations it was behind drone attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil plants and warned it is ready for a full-fledged war. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Abbas Mousavi said Washington had adopted a maximum pressure strategy against Iran, but because of its failure, the U.S. is leaning toward maximum lies. His remarks came as a senior commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard said America's military bases and aircraft carriers are stationed 1,243 miles around Iran were in range of its missiles. So Iran is saying that they had nothing to do with the Saudi Arabian oil field or oil refinery attack. Now that's interesting. Okay, so you have to think, and here's the Wall Street Journal. Real quick, let's go over this headline. Wall Street Journal, Trump has few options to respond to Saudi oil attack. President faces questions about Iran's strategy with depleted national security team. Now, there's the headline. Ding, 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 ding. With depleted national security team. So who did Donald Trump just fire? John Bolton. That's right. He just fired John Bolton, who, before he did that, was somebody that the left universally hated because John Bolton was hawk, pro-war, or pro-regime change, essentially do the same formula that we've done that has destabilized the Middle East, according to some people. So, that's what I immediately went to, because I thought to myself, wow, Iran must be the dumbest people. I mean, they must be run by the dumbest people on the face of the planet. And think about this for a second. Okay, so John Bolton wants to go to war with Iran, and he is pushing not talks, not negotiations. John Bolton, apparently, according to reports, was pushing a regime change in Iran, like we did with Libya, right? Like we did in Iraq, like we, like some people wanted to do in Syria. Like let's go for regime change. All right. That guy's fired. The guy who wants to go to war with Iran is fired from the White House. And so we are to believe that Iran said, oh, so now war with the United States is less likely. The leadership of Iran obviously knows what happened to Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein and others. You think they really want to go to war with us? You really think that? I mean, listen, I know some of the religious leaders and the theocracy, they want blood. I get that. But so we're supposed to believe that John Bolton gets fired, which means war with Iran is less likely. And so Iran's like, hey, what if we get these rebels to fly drones over and attack Saudi Arabia, thereby putting war back on the table, putting regime change back on the table? Granted, I get it. There are people in the Middle East, dictators, who don't necessarily think rationally, but I think sometimes they do also think about their own self-interest and power. And so this is odd to me. It doesn't make any sense. It reminds me of when Assad, remember the reports where Assad gassed his own people right after Barack Obama said, my red line is if Assad uses chemical weapons? And so Assad then turned around and used chemical weapons, according to the reports that came in. I thought that was strange. Well, I was like, well, he must be the dumbest guy in the world. If you want to mess with the United States military and you want to do the one thing that you were told you can't do, and then he allegedly did it. I mean, it just is very, very odd to me. And I can't help it. I'm sorry. I can't help but not look at the context. And you've got a hint here in the Wall Street Journal. The headline, again, Trump has few options to respond to Saudi oil attack. president faces questions about Iran strategy with depleted national security team. His national security advisor, John Bolton, was fired or resigned, however you want to put it, last week. And Iran then does the one thing that puts war back on the table. Now, you guys feel free to tell me what I am missing here. Sound off facebook.com/conduit news. That's facebook.com/conduit news. Now, on the other hand, we also have a situation with Brett Kavanaugh. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's back in the news because there is a guy who wants to sell a book, and in this book, he's got a fresh new accusation against Brett Kavanaugh. Has to do with, genitalia being forced in some woman's face and back at Yale at a college party. And here is the National Review's take on it. Go ahead, Joe. The New York Times anti-Kavanaugh bombshell is actually a dud. Yeah, that's because buried in the accusation here, the woman who allegedly had this done to her doesn't remember the incident and has refused to be interviewed. So that's a thing. And the authors of the New York Times article omitted the fact that the alleged victim has no memory of the alleged incident. Going over to the New York Post, New York Post has even had to, the New York Times has had to delete a bizarre tweet referring to Brett Kavanaugh's private parts because the left is so unhinged. And then the Daily Wire says, next article, breaking, New York Times adds a correction to Kavanaugh smear article. Ryan Saavedra, the New York Times was forced to correct a smear article on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh after it was revealed that they excluded exculpatory evidence from their report. An earlier version of this article, listen, this is from the New York Times. They've now updated their smear article on Brett Kavanaugh. An earlier version of this article, which was adapted from a forthcoming book, did not include one element of the book's account regarding an assertion by a Yale classmate that friends of Brett Kavanaugh pushed his genitals into the hand of a female student at a drunken party. The Times wrote in the correction, the book reports that the female student declined to be interviewed and friends say that she does not recall the incident. That information has been added to the article. So it's a big dud, but this didn't stop. This did not stop. You had Kamala Harris. Brett Kavanaugh must be removed and impeached. You had Beto O'Rourke, Julian Castro, virtually all of the Democrat presidential candidates come out in force. It was a coordinated media blitz attack against Brett Kavanaugh again. And people are saying, Senator Kamala Extract Harris, he lied. He lied to the Senate. Brett Kavanaugh lied under oath. He must be impeached. He must be removed. So now they're talking about impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh. Now, why? Because if you guys know about the media and you follow the media, you guys can sense this too. It's not just me. It was a coordinated effort over the weekend. Everybody was out in full force, and they were going after Brett Kavanaugh. Now, the answer is, they're doing it, I mean, it's baseless, but why are they doing it? Why are they trying to convince their base? Why are they dredging this back up? Number one, the number one thing that I found out there that people think is, it must be because Ruth Bader Ginsburg is really, really under the weather, and she could go any second. Okay, that's the first thing, and that's what some people are thinking. But I think the second reason is more likely. We're about to find out that Andrew McCabe lied, and he's going to be indicted, and there may be more indictments. Okay, so I actually think they're focusing on this fact, or they're focusing on this claim. Well, Brett Kavanaugh lied. Brett Kavanaugh lied. This was not investigated. He lied. He lied. He lied. So that when we find out, maybe this week or next week, that Andrew McCabe lied to the FBI, and who knows if there might be even more charges coming, and who knows if James Clapper or John Brennan or James Comey are going down with this as well, because it could be the thing with this Inspector General's report that comes out. Andrew McCabe is indicted, but the Inspector General report leads to even more information about these other people. Everybody thought James Comey was off the hook. Maybe not. Certainly was off the hook with the first violations, leaking classified information. So That's why I think they're going after Kavanaugh, because this could be a week where there are major bombshells surrounding the Inspector General, surrounding essentially what was a coordinated effort by this government, by the Obama administration and deep state officials to remove the President of the United States from office, make it very difficult for him to execute any of the agenda the American people voted for. So you tell me what you think. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. A lot of news today. What do you think about the Saudi Arabia situation? What do you think about, do you think the president needs to go to war? Already they're saying, I can read articles about Trump's Iran war, Trump's Iran war. Do not do, I don't know about you. Don't do it, Mr. President. Please don't do this. You know that it is incredibly popular. You know, Donald Trump's been against the Iraq war forever. He knows what happens if we execute this same foreign policy strategy. Do not do this, or have the policy where we bomb you back to the Stone Age, but we come home immediately. I mean, if you're going to do anything, that's the only option, but not this. Do not do this. The media will put this around your neck. They will. They are baiting the President of the United States, wanting him to go back on his no war promise and trying to quit all this endless war nonsense. Wall Street Journal saying things like he has really, very few options. Really does he have few options? I'm pretty sure we got a lot of options. You see how people are trying to shape this narrative that this Saudi Arabian drone strike, on their petroleum, it's a Pearl Harbor moment. Oh wow, Pearl Harbor. Well, we need to get ready for war. The president was tweeting that they're waiting for confirmation from Saudi Arabia and said that they're locked and loaded, but did not specifically blame Iran in his tweet. Now, the U.S. government, Mike Pompeo, has indicated with more specificity that they think Iran was behind these Yemeni rebels. The world of backing rebels in the Middle East. You know what I mean? Like it's like a whole nother. You know what I mean? Like, how do you know what rebel is really loyal to who? Anyway, we're going to take a break. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm way off base here. It's a crazy news day on a Monday. We'll be back in just a moment. I want you to welcome to the program for the first time. We have New York Times bestselling author Amity Shlaes is with us. Amity, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Good day. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you are the author of some amazing books that really set the record straight and challenge maybe some traditional narratives that we hear about history. Obviously, your New York Times best-selling book, The Forgotten Man, Tackling the New Deal, and the misconceptions what's taught versus what actually was. And you have a new book that's coming out November 19th of this year called The Great Society, A New History. What made you want to tackle this subject of the Great Society?
Well, as some of the listeners may have heard recently, a number of candidates are coming up with ideas such as guaranteed income
in
or
Arkansas,
guaranteed health care.
every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Now, what's interesting, Dennis on Facebook, our Facebook page, writes, Yemen used, these would be rebels in Yemen, but Yemen rebels used Iranian drones, so we must go to war with Iran? Really? Question mark. Now, that's a good question. Wasn't, the way I understand it, some people are saying that there's no way, this is the way they're phrasing that. Okay, Dennis, I appreciate your thought because it's all kind of making sense to me now. As I was listening to the mainstream media coming into work this morning, they were saying, U.S. officials say that the Yemeni-backed rebels could not have accomplished the drone strike without the help of Iran. So what I was thinking was well, the help of Iran would mean, they would allow them to use, their technology in terms of like mission, operating the mission with GPS satellites. I don't know how that stuff works. But something like that, you know what I mean? Like officially sanctioned. But if it was just Iranian drone technology, that's, you know what I mean? Like that's strange. I mean, it seems like, Dennis, that's what you're thinking was it's like, well, they had an Iranian drone. It was made by Iran, and then they used it. And so now Iran did it. So now, isn't that interesting? Why would we go to war? That's another thing. The president here may just go and bomb Yemen. I mean, if you think about it. Seriously, think about that for a second. He may ignore Iran entirely. I mean, if the people that did this in Saudi Arabia, or did this to Saudi Arabia, affecting world oil prices, why would you go to war with Iran? Why don't just end this Yemeni conflict that I got a feeling the United States could end pretty quickly? It's just something to think about. This is I don't know about you guys. I mean, we've been at war with the Middle East for 18 years, essentially 18 years, or I mean, what are we going to be at war 30? Do we want to be in the Middle East and war and just start these new conflicts for 30 years? It just doesn't make any sense to me, not at all. Do we have time for this? Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear what Joe Biden had to say? Listen to this. Joe Biden recounts Corn Pop, apparently some gangster, like his childhood bully. Listen to this. Go ahead and click play on this Twitter video, Joe. Scrolling down. Right there. Get it. Refresh right there. You got to listen
I learned
to
a
this.
lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and they weren't allowed to. There was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did, and back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off, and he said, I'll meet you outside. My car, these were all public housing behind
Stop
it.
for a second.
My car
it gets worse, folks, but we're out of time. We'll get to it later in the broadcast. We do have a great show for you. We're going to be talking with Charles Fuquay coming up at 7, and then I'm going to introduce you to businessman John Miller coming up at 7:33. Don't go anywhere. I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Of our health benefits or immense job programs. There's a concern about technology today. There's a concern about tariffs today. And all these concerns were concerns of the 1960s. So in terms of the concern list, we're in a replay. And then the question is, what do you do? We know what they did in the 1960s. The Great Society was the program of Lyndon Johnson. That was his giant social program, which in turn, as a program, was a replay of what Roosevelt did in the New Deal. But in any case, what we learned watching the endeavors of the 60s is some were good, others were less good, and one of the enormous problems was we thought we could fix everything. And that's what you want to repeat to your.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. That's the craziest clip of Joe Biden. It keeps going and going and going. Unbelievable. All right, so Arkansas news. This is interesting. Going to be in the next couple of days. Going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. Arkansas Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard, has moved forward with filing a resolution that would remove State Representative Mickey Gates from the Arkansas House of Representatives. You see this piece here from John Moritz. Now, I understand, one of the reasons this is being done is because Mickey Gates pled no contest to these charges of essentially, not paying income tax. And if you read some of the quotes from the attorney for Mickey Gates, he'll tell you that, this is not your typical no contest plea, but we have the Arkansas General Assembly essentially saying, look, we passed a law this past year, and it says any official for a public trust crime like not paying taxes, if you plead no contest or guilty or whatever, you can't be a member of the Arkansas House of Representatives. The only known representative to ever be expelled from the House was former Speaker John Wilson of Clark County, who was expelled in 1837 after fatally stabbing another member on the House floor. Gates pleaded no contest to a single felony charge of failing to file or pay a tax return in July, receiving probation. Gates was also ordered to pay $74,000 in back taxes. If he completes the term of his sentence, his case can be discharged without a final adjudication of guilt. So, in other words, has the court even really, if you plead no contest, but I guess my question is, has the court accepted his plea or is it just deferred? You know what I'm saying? It's interesting. So, his attorney, Mickey Gates' attorney, said Friday that even if Gates is expelled, he plans to run for the same office again in 2020. That's something I said. I said that last week. I said, how weird is it going to be if the Arkansas House of Representatives expels him and he gets reelected? How strange is that going to be? Seriously. Now, this has to do, let's actually read let's read the resolution here. I've got it. Hey, you throw the resolution up there. Resolution 1079. You see that there? Okay. Concerning the expulsion of Representative Mickey Gates from the membership of the House of Representatives. All right. Let's see. Whereas Article 5, Section 12 of the Arkansas Constitution provides that each House of the General Assembly shall have power to determine the rules of its proceedings, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member, and whereas the Arkansas Constitution and the rules of the House of Representatives of the 92nd General Assembly are controlling documents by which this body should conduct itself in making determinations regarding discipline up to and including expulsion by 2/3 vote of its members, and whereas Act 894, which was passed by the 92nd General Assembly during the 2019 regular session, amended Arkansas Code Title 21, Chapter 8, Subchapter 3 to add Section 21-8-305, which states, in pertinent part, quote, if a person had pleaded guilty or no contest to or has been found guilty of a public trust crime, he or she shall not, number one, file as a candidate for a constitutional office, number two, run as a candidate for a constitutional office, or three, hold a constitutional office. And whereas Act 894 of 2019 also amended Arkansas Code Section 21-8-301 to include a definition of public trust crime and as a crime prohibited under Arkansas Constitution. Let's see, keeps going. Arkansas Constitution lists the following as prohibited crimes for service as a member of the General Assembly, quote, embezzlement of public money, bribery, forgery, or other infamous crime, and goes on to state that infamous crime includes felony offense. Whereas on June 29th, 2019, House District 22 Representative Mickey Gates entered a plea of no contest to a single charge of violating Arkansas Code, failure to pay or file a tax return, a felony offense. Representative Gates entered into a no contest plea agreement under which he will serve 6 years of probation and pay restitution to the state of Arkansas in the amount of $74,000 for tax years 2012, 13, and 14. And whereas Act 894 of 2019 is not the main premise for the action requested in this resolution, but it offers further support as to what the 92nd General Assembly considers grounds for expulsion of a sitting member from the membership. Action taken to punish Representative Gates pursuant to this resolution is undertaken in accordance with the power granted by the Arkansas Constitution to the House of Representatives as the sole authority for discipline. Now, that is in there because I think they realize that Act 894 that they passed, if it would not stand a court challenge. That's why they put that in there, just so you know. Because if you read the comments from Mickey Gates' attorney last week, I mean, he was simply saying that that Act 894 of 2019 actually violates Article 5 of the Arkansas Constitution when it talks about expelling and that sort of thing, because it's adding these extra requirements. And so this resolution, when a judge looks at it, or if a judge looks at it, they're trying to say, look, 894 is not the main premise, but it offers support to what we're about to do. They're saying that they are using the authority to remove Mickey Gates solely under Article 5, of what's already in the Constitution. Again, that is done, I think, because Speaker Shepard is probably consulted with other individuals, and they've gone back and they've looked at Act 894 that they just passed, and I think they've realized that it would not stand up in court. So they're going a different direction. Now, they're still referencing Act 894, which that's kind of, I'm just kind of talking this over my head here. That's interesting in and of itself to still reference 894, but then say, but we're not using 894, but we're going to reference 894. It may be a situation where they're trying to eat their cake and have it. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 92nd. How weird would that be, though? Like, what would happen? I'm just curious. Wouldn't it be very awkward if the House of Representatives expels Mickey Gates by 2/3 vote? Then there's a court challenge, and the court finds that the Arkansas General Assembly acted inappropriately, not consistent with the law, and then he's back in the chamber. Wouldn't that be weird? I mean, it would just be very awkward. Anyway, but, I mean, maybe that's not going to happen. Who knows? Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 92nd General Assembly of the state of Arkansas that House District 22 Representative Mickey Gates has pleaded no contest to a public trust crime as defined by law, and the House of Representatives finds that the plea of no contest and that conduct is the subject of Representative Gates' plea agreement is unbecoming of a member of the House of Representatives and is punishable by this body. Oh, no, I just lost my, hang on, House resolution. Sorry, I hit the wrong button, folks. Is punishable by this body. That in exercise of its sole authority to discipline its members under Arkansas Constitution, Article 5, Section 12, the House of Representatives hereby expels House District 22 Representative Mickey Gates from the membership of the House of Representatives of the 92nd General Assembly. So, they're going to take this up on a vote. Is there an actual date on this? Shepard has not yet set a date for when the House will meet to consider a resolution. A 2/3 majority of the House must vote to expel a member. Now, here's my question. And well, who knows what's going to happen, but I think they should let Mickey Gates address his, apparently soon to be ex-colleagues, but I think they should let Mickey Gates go down to the floor and talk to people about this. Seriously. You know what I mean? I mean, if anything, to get his side of the story on record. I mean, that's the one thing we don't really have here. We have excerpts, we have little quotes about what Mickey Gates said the government told him, what the Department of Finance and Administration told him. I still want to know, I mean, whether or not you think he should resign or whether or not you think the House is doing that. I mean, the House is expelling Mickey Gates because they just don't want to defend him anymore. They don't care they just, it's like, hey, look, the law says this, but we just don't want, if we're honest about it, we don't like the politics of having a Republican representative that owes $74,000 to the government. We don't like that image, and, we want to get rid of even the appearance of corruption. I mean, that's what it is. Okay, all right. And I can understand that. I mean, I think we all can understand that. But we really don't know. I still want to know why they're only making him pay $74,000. Why not the rest of the money that they claimed he owed, which was a lot more than $74,000? Why in the plea agreement? I mean, why would the government agree to a plea agreement where this guy gets to essentially have a clean record at the end of all of this? That's a legitimate question. Like, why did the Department of Finance and Administration agree to drop charges in this case? Why didn't it go to trial either? That's another question. Why didn't DFNA say, no, we're going to trial on this? And we had a public arrest. We perp walked Mickey Gates. Somebody from the government tipped off the media. Do you guys not remember all of this? I do. They tipped off the media that the arrest was going down. The reporters were waiting at the courthouse in Hot Springs. So I still have a lot of questions. And I, for one, I mean, there actually might be a lot if the speaker will allow Mickey Gates to go down and address his colleagues as to why this is happening. Boy, it'll definitely make for an interesting debate. I'll tell you that much, for real. Let me know what you guys think about this. Resolution filed to expel State Representative Mickey Gates. It is an update from last week when they were just, talking about it. Matthew Shepard said he intended to file one. He, in fact, did by the end of the week. And so we will continue to follow this story as it develops. Let me know what you think about State Representative Mickey Gates. Do you think he should just resign? Do you think, here's the thing. All of this happened, and he still got reelected in the midst of all of this. And sources tell me the reason Mickey Gates, I'm going to tell you, listen to this. Sources tell me in his district, 22, the reason he got reelected in spite of being arrested and perp walked and having all the press across the state report on it is because he went to his district, he went group to group, and he told them his side of the story. He told them what led to that moment. And I'm told that's why he got reelected, because he was able to convince the people in his district that something that was unjust had taken place. Now, that's why I think it'd be very interesting to see, is Mickey Gates going to be allowed to defend himself against the charges, against this expulsion? We'll see. I doubt it, but I think it would be a courtesy, to let Mickey Gates speak for as long as he wants. I think that would be a courtesy, but I don't think they're going to afford him that. I would be shocked if they did, but anyway. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break, reset. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment. I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
So we thought we could fix everything, because that was the great danger, that we wanted to be great, not just good. And there we faltered. There we failed, because our ambition was too great and because government's ambition was too great. Over and over again, there are different ways to get to great. One is through the public sector. One is through the private sector. You can try both. We tried almost exclusively getting great through the public sector. That didn't work. And in the book, I show how some of the things the private sector did in the 60s were amazing and turned out to solve a lot of the problems that the politicians were insisting only the government could fix.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about how this Lyndon Johnson's Great Society gave rise to a silent majority.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. So, one of Governor Asa Hutchinson's key achievements, aside from the fact of, he's got two big achievements. Okay, one of them is over the 2 terms. We're still in the middle of his second term. He obviously did the Arkansas Works program, which was maintaining the Obamacare expansion of Medicaid here in Arkansas, and and then there was work requirements added. Those work requirements got thrown out, and it's kind of a mess. And enrollment has skyrocketed, and let's just say this: the cost has skyrocketed, and because the cost has skyrocketed, that's why Arkansans this fiscal year are going to pay $70 million in a net tax increase. When it was all said and done, there were good tax cuts, and then there were bad tax increases. So that's certainly one thing that I think is going to be a legacy of Governor Asa Hutchinson. Then there's also his focus on China. We talk about that quite often because it doesn't make much sense to me why we would be bending over backwards to sell Arkansas to China, to 6 Chinese entities, communist Chinese entities. One Chinese deal too, but 6 different ones. It's very, very confusing, and certainly highlights a contrast, I think, between the current administration in the White House and the leadership here in Arkansas about what's an acceptable economic development deal. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily agree with taxpayer money doing anything to be given to private companies with the hope that jobs one day will come. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea at all. But I certainly, if we're going to do it, which we are, why not give it to an American company? Why not try to bring them in here? Why try to give it to the Chinese when we know the only reason the Chinese are doing this is because they have a Trojan horse mentality? They're just trying to get their foot in the door. And they also have a history of bribing politicians. That's the second legacy. Okay. The third legacy will be his commitment to computer science. And the governor had a big push. When he first started this, that's all he would talk about really, was how we've got to get computer coding in our public schools because, computers are the future. This headline from Hunter Field, though, listen to this, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Arkansas governor's computer science push on a roll. I saw that headline and I was like, man, what a positive headline for the governor. Like, that is a very positive headline, isn't it? Show this headline, Joe. When's the last time that the leader of a state or a nation gets that kind of headline from the press? Arkansas governor's computer science push on a roll. That's a good headline if you're Governor Asa Hutchinson. There's no question about it. So he was in Lonoke, and it's described like this from Hunter Field. Governor Asa Hutchinson's face lit up Thursday as a Lonoke High School senior in the Jackrabbits gym posed a question about gender inequality. Why are women a minority in the field of computer science? And is there value to bringing some gender parity to the technology sector, she asked. The Republican governor, alone, in the center of the gymnasium with Students filling the bleachers on either side lowered the microphone, took a step back, and smiled. The question impressed him, and he had an answer. His administration has focused on shrinking the gender gap in high school computer classes. Still smiling, Hutchinson raised the microphone to tell the students that best results come when various perspectives are considered. Coders shape the future, he said. I don't think anyone wants the future to be shaped by only guys. End quote. It's brief interactions like these that have evolved over the past 4 years, Hutchinson said in an interview after the assembly at Lone Oak High School, the sixth stop on Hutchinson's 9th computer science education tour across Arkansas. Wow, it's fantastic. Oh, man. So here's obviously, like, I got a huge problem with that. Like, yeah, I know you got some girl who's been indoctrinated to think that if you don't have equality of outcomes, that there's something wrong. And that's just not the case, okay? Why are there not women in the STEM fields, which is engineering, mathematics? It's just, I mean, this, what is it? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the STEM fields. Look, it's just the way it is, you know? It's not because women are being discriminated against, you know? It's not. It's the fact that, and Jordan Peterson has a ton of statistics about this. If you go look this up, this is just true in all societies. You know, your science, your technology, your engineering, and your math is dominated by men. I mean, you know, that's not to say that women aren't capable. That's not to say that women don't, but women, listen, women and men are different and they think about different things. You know, they have a lot of times different interests. Now, obviously, you're always going to have an exception. Right now, there's somebody listening to this program who's a woman who's excellent at math and who's pursuing that or who wants to be an engineer. But I mean, this question here, this was a teachable moment, you know? Again, the question was this. Why are women, there's a high school student asking Governor Asa Hutchinson, why are women a minority in the field of computer science? And is there value to bringing some gender parity to the technology sector? Well, I mean, I'm not expecting the governor to know why women are a minority, but the statistics are clear. But as a Republican, I mean, my answer would be something like this. Well, I know, you know, it's the left that does get really concerned with equality of outcome, and that's the premise of your question, is equality of outcome. And it is something that is just not attainable. When we're going to say, look at this group and that group and this group and that group, and the left wants to put all these peoples and all these different people in groups, and then they want to pit them against one another, and you get a question like that. I mean, it's actually, it could have been a moment to kind of challenge the premise of the question, which is, you know, the current state of things in the STEM fields is somehow wrong, or there's somehow some sort of discrimination that's going on against women, and that's the reason why there's not as many women who want to learn to code or want to learn to be an engineer, and that's just not the case. Matter of fact, we need to look up Jordan Peterson on STEM fields because we can do that. We're going to get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, Lake Hamilton High School. A lot of people criticizing this because they had a "Make America Great Again" banner for their football team it was Lake Hamilton High School versus Malvern, the Malvern Leopards, and they had a sign for their high school team to bust through. It said, "Make America Great Again, trump the Leopards," meaning beat the Leopards. And man, listening to some of these people, they're freaking out. You know, it's so funny.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM Jonesboro.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
Well, a great society tends to identify groups. I'm going to help this group today, that group tomorrow, and we all want to help the individuals in those groups, no questions. But what you do when you establish one group is you leave someone out who might need something, at least freedom, and doesn't happen to have his name attached to a group. It's sort of like airlines. When you go to fly, and they call out all the number one groups, and you like all the number one groups, women with small babies, veterans, and so on, right? But what happens if you're not in any of those groups, and you too need to board early for whatever reason? There's no chance on earth you're going to get to board early because you are not in a special class group. And that kind of gets you down, and other people might look at you and know that you need to board early. But since you're not in a group, they're going to be rude to you, right? And you're going to board seventh, and there's going to be no room for your carry-on. That's a good analogy for the society that we created. We took away the discretion of the flight crew and the people around in the queue, and we made a whole lot of rules that said these groups go first and everyone else forget about them, in effect. That's the silent majority. It's also the forgotten man, the term I use in the 1930s book. So it's always dangerous to make favored classes as much as you care about the individuals in those classes, because your ability to evaluate who really needs concern on a given flight, boarding, in a given airport in a given hour is very poor. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Absolutely, it does. And you know, it seems like for whatever reason, you have people that claim to want to help or fix a problem. Now, sometimes I wonder how sincere, but there are people who are they sincerely want to help. And in order to do that, in order to help this group, you've got to take from this group over here. I mean, I know that was what the Forgotten Man talked about, because you know, in your book, The Forgotten Man, again, that dealt with the New Deal. People were trying to fix these ills, to fix the Depression, and they talked about this forgotten man. But your book is focusing on a different forgotten man. Matter of fact, the real forgotten man. Go ahead.
We always create forgotten men when we remember specific men or women. So really, in the 1930s, we did that for the first time in a giant way. That's what the New Deal was. And of course, it entailed great spending. So state governments were undermined in the 1930s. That was the first peacetime period when the federal government, Washington, got bigger than the states. Wow, what's that about? Well, goodbye, Alexei de Tocqueville, right?
Yes.
Goodbye. The interesting.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. If you missed the first hour, you can get it on podcast or video on demand at conduitnews.com, SoundCloud, also your Apple device as well. Folks, want to welcome back. We've got a Republican from Independence County. Charlie Fuquay is back with us. Charlie, how's it going, sir?
Good. You know, I'm sitting in my office and waiting to come on, and as I sat here, a whole gaggle of geese flew overhead, and I am reminded how blessed we are to live in Arkansas. It's just such a beautiful place.
You're right. You know, it really is. I mean, it's beautiful. Whether you're in the Ozarks or whether you're in the flatland. I mean, it's so amazing the different types of environments you can find here in the state. Absolutely, I agree with you there, Charlie. Hey, couple years ago, you guys. All these county committees have dinners. They got Reagan Day dinners. They got Lincoln Day dinners. I think you're the only one, Charlie. Independence County, y'all are the only one that you guys do a Trump Day dinner now, don't you?
You know, I think maybe up in Blytheville, I think they did a Trump Day dinner after us.
I think you're right. Mississippi County. Yes, sir.
And I think that's due to a lady by the name of Dorothy Crockett.
Yes. She's fantastic.
And people that know Republicans will know that name. She is just the finest lady you could ever meet. But ours was first. and anyway, we're having another Trump Day dinner. It's going to be February 11th. It'll be at 6 p.m., and it'll be at the Batesville Community Center. And if you'd like to come, we're inviting all the constitutional officers, all of our federal representatives. And I just want to say a little bit about Independence County. And Batesville's the county seat. It was not very many years ago that we were a pretty solid Democrat county. It was a rare exception when a Republican got elected to any office. And as we talk today, there is only, from President Trump down to the office of Justice of the Peace, there is only one Democrat representing Independence County, and he's a Justice of the Peace. And after this next election, I hope that there isn't a single Democrat representing Independence County.
I saw where... go ahead.
We've come a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys have. A lot of Northeast Arkansas has as well since, President Obama was elected in 2008. Speaking of the Democrats, I think I saw where Senator Ted Cruz came out and said that President Donald Trump has broke the Democrat Party. It really is amazing to see how radical these people that are now still calling themselves Democrats have become, isn't it?
It is. It is incredible. Maybe our county was carried by Donald Trump by 70%. And as I just walk around and maybe wear a MAGA hat, people will just tell me how much they love Donald Trump and how crazy the Democrats have become. And it's amazing how crazy they are. You know what? Other than Islam, socialism has murdered more people than any ideology on planet Earth. And the Democrats are saying, oh, that's what we want. They have totally forgotten history.
Yeah, and there's even an ad, I think, that was running during the Democrat debate last week that a Republican group put out. And, they got a little bit of heat because it started with a photo of Ocasio-Cortez wanting socialism, and then there was a fire that burned through her face, and it actually showed the skulls of Cambodia, and there was a survivor, whose dad, went through all that, and she's now in America, and she's now safe. And, of course, the tolerant left responded by going after that woman, and she's now receiving death threats from, all the people trying to defend a God. But, I mean, to your point, socialism is certainly something, communism, whatever you want to call it, it is something that has taken the lives in the 20th century of, over 100 million people? Can we say that?
I don't know the number, but it's a lot. You talked about Cambodia. I just happen to have, right in my neighborhood, a woman who is a immigrant from Cambodia. And, she doesn't have a lot of use for socialism or communism. She lived that hell. And, I mean, that's what it is. And so, people that know what it is, but what the problem is, our educational system has brainwashed our youth. And they think socialism is some great thing where nobody has to work and the government gives everybody everything free. And it can't work that way. Hey, I want to talk a little bit more about this dinner.
All right.
I went to another, I think they called it a Reagan Day dinner. It was in Sharp County, and Tim Griffin was the keynote speaker. And he is going to be the keynote speaker at our dinner. And one thing he said at this dinner that really impressed me, he talked about all the great electoral strides that Republicans have made in Arkansas. And basically, we own this state. And, I mean, that has been a turnover that has happened really quick. And Tim said, the people have given us their trust. But we can lose that trust. And we have a party platform that is really a great party platform. But we, elected officials and Republicans, need to follow that platform. Because there was a Democrat model in this state, and the Democrat model was tell the people that you're for them, but sell out to the lobby.
Yes.
And the problem is that I am seeing some Republicans say, hey, that model worked really good for the Democrats. Why don't we jump on board with that? And, it did work good for the Democrats, but it also cost the Democrats everything in the final analysis. We need to follow the example in government of a man by the name of Jesus Christ. And I just want to say something about that example. He, who was clearly the head guy in his group, washed his disciples' feet. He was the servant king. As a matter of fact, he served like no one else has ever served. He was willing to die for the people he served and die a horrible death. I remember one time when the disciples were arguing over who was the greatest among them, and Jesus told them, let he who would be great among you become the servant of the others. And he not only said that and taught that, he lived that. And if we don't make that our example as Republicans, we will lose that trust that the people have given us. And I think that is so important that we never lose sight of where we've come from. I know I talk too much, but I got to say this too. Here's the goal of what I'm going to call the left, the elite, whatever you want to call them. Our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident. that all men are created equal and endowed by government with their inalienable rights. Wait. Did I say something wrong there?
Yes, you did.
It's by their creator. And they want us to forget where our rights come from. Because if our rights come from government can take them away from us. But we must never let government convince us that our rights come from them. Our rights come to us from God.
I'm so glad that you're saying that. We're talking with Charles Fuquay from the Independence County Republican Committee, and he's talking about this Trump Day dinner they're going to be having February 11th, right? Right, Charles?
Yes, it's at 6 p.m. at the community center, and I want to say this. Tickets are sold in advance. If you show up that night, you're not getting in.
Well, I mean, we got a lot of time to buy tickets. It's middle of September, so we're going to have you back on when we get closer. But I wanted to touch base with you because I always enjoy having you on, and I especially love what you just said there about how our rights are not a dispensation from government. There's a lot of people. I mean, for example, you take the Second Amendment. A lot of people now believe that the government allows us to have guns, and they're just ignoring this fundamental concept of this God-given, creator-given right to self-defense, to self-preservation. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And when you really think about it in terms of that, it's our God-given right. And the answer of the left, when we are being shot at by lunatics in our society, the answer to the left is to make it harder for us to get weapons, or they want to confiscate them, as Beto O'Rourke has now said. And there are now Democrats, Charles, that are coming out and saying Beto O'Rourke really stepped in it. He should not have essentially let them know what our plan is, which is gun confiscation. Yeah. And now we're not going to get anything done because of what Beto O'Rourke has said. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if they passed a law that all guns had to be turned in, I'm sure all the criminals would obey that law because they obey all laws, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. I've got some guns. I've got some guns that they want to take away. But, I have never in my life, and I'll be 70 in a few days, I've never shot anybody. And, I don't have any plans to shoot anybody unless it's in self-defense or defense of others.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's insanity. I don't know any other way to look at it.
It really is. Well,
but you know what? The world is rebelling against this. We look at the Great Britain exiting the EU. This whole drive for a one-world government led by the elite. The people of the world are rebelling.
And you look at what's going on with Hong Kong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly wish they would have a Second Amendment right now. I mean, really, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really a sad situation because Hong Kong is probably the most economically free place on earth. And China wants to absorb it into that that communism. I don't know what else to call it. But
are you surprised? I think it also, there's a lot of biblical Christians in Hong Kong that are, they're more free over there than certainly on mainland China, where they're tearing down churches and forcing the church to go underground. And it's very, very sad when you think about what our brothers and sisters in Christ are going through over there.
Yeah.
So
I wish I could, and if anybody knows, let me know. But I wish I could understand whatever relationship there is between the international bankers and China today, because the international bankers want everybody on planet Earth to be their slave, and in China, basically everybody's the slave of the government. They give a degree of economic freedom if it profits the government, but they'll take that away from you in a heartbeat. Yeah. And it just seems like this model of the elite controlling everybody is the model the international bankers have, and it's what China has.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. Well, let me get your comment on the fact that Arkansas has, 6 deals in the works with Chinese Communist Party entities. They call themselves companies. but we're trying to give away taxpayer dollars and incentives to bring 6 Chinese companies into Arkansas. And I just, I think it's a big no-no. Like, I think it's a terrible idea. But for some reason, people think that it's perfectly fine. And, I mean, I think it's a Trojan horse. What do you think?
Well, here's my take on this. Trade with China has been a disaster for the United States. We don't need China. We can make all that stuff ourselves. Now, it may take some time because we've let our industries die. But we need, I don't think we should deal with nations that don't give their people economic freedom. I don't think we should deal with any of the Ayatollahs and all those people. I don't think we should deal with China.
Interesting. Kind of like to use a Star Trek reference, kind of like well, if you want to get into the Federation, you've got to, meet these criteria, or we're going to, ignore you. Sorry, I couldn't help it, but Star Trek, I'm a Star Trek nerd. Hey, Charlie Fuquay, we appreciate it, sir. Go ahead one more time. Tell everybody when this Trump dinner is going to be, and we appreciate you coming on.
It's going to be February 11th at 6 p.m. at the Batesville Community Center.
All right. And tickets you got to get them beforehand. And so, obviously, I'm sure there'll be candidates setting up tables and organizations having tables there as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate it, Charlie Fuquay. We appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a great week, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All
you have a good day.
And happy early birthday. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Discretion of states. So in the 60s, of course, we did that even more, and the courts did too. Right? All the laws we passed, they said the federal government knows better, and we had a few problems that were very serious, such as civil rights. Some people think, and I tend to agree with them, in some cases it was good to have federal intervention, the Civil Rights Act. But we went too far. We made too many federal rules. That we kind of pried open the last door, and suddenly the federal government was running everything. And what I have to put this for the poor reader and listener who might not know all these books and be a little bit dizzy with all these titles, I'll give you a concrete example. There's a hero in my book, and that hero is the governor of California, whose name was R.R. And R.R. Was really intent on
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we told you this last hour, but I wanted to follow up because I really wanted to find out what Jordan Peterson had to say about why men and women, why there's a disparity in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math. Governor Asa Hutchinson was recently asked at Lonoke High School. He was asked, why are women a minority in the field of computer science? Is there any value to bringing some gender parity to the technology sector? Governor Hutchinson reportedly saying, coders shape the future. I don't think anyone wants the future to be shaped by only guys. This quest by the left to have an equality of outcome certainly is influencing students and female questioners of the Arkansas governor. I just wanted for the record to state that when societies try to socially engineer what people are naturally doing to get them to reverse what a natural trend is, it can have the opposite effect. Here's Jordan Peterson on this very phenomenon in the Norwegian countries. Listen. Sorry, we got a little...
Here's the theory. The theory is that women are tilted towards empathizing and males are tilted towards systematizing. And that seems to fall into alignment with other observations suggesting that the biggest gender difference between adult humans is interest preference. Women are much more likely to express interest in occupations that involve a lot of social contact, whereas men are more likely to manifest interest in occupations that have to do with things. And so one example of that, you see this in the Scandinavian countries, despite the fact that they've really done everything possible to flatten out the environmental differences between opportunities for boys and for girls, is that in the Scandinavian countries, the ratio of male nurses to female nurses is 1 to 20. And of female engineers to male engineers is 1 to 20. And the governments now and then do a big push to try to get more men into nursing and more women into engineering, and with a lot of push and a lot of advertising and marketing and so forth, they can shift the proportions to some minor degree, but as soon as they stop pushing hard, they just snap back to 1 in 20. It's really interesting, if you think about it, that the biggest gender differences that are reported in the world are reported between men and women in Scandinavian societies, because those are the most gender equal societies in the world. And so one of the perverse things that has happened is that you can imagine that there's some reason that men and women are different is because of environmental variability, right? The environment for the women and the environment for the men is different. And then some proportion is due to genetic variability. And so then one idea, which is false, is that if you eradicated the environmental variability, the gender differences would disappear. That would only be the case if all the gender differences were due to environmental variability. What happens instead is that when you eliminate the environmental variability, you maximize the genetic variability. And the reason you do that is because that's all that's left. Right? You've eradicated the other source of variability.
As you can see, the data doesn't support this quest from the left from equality of outcome. Matter of fact, it suggests that, things will it'll be a waste of time and things will just snap back to, men want to do things with their hands and women want to do things socially. That's not to say that there aren't women that are very good engineers or mathematicians. There are, but generally speaking, this is why women are not in STEM fields, and that's not a bad thing. Right? Can you imagine? I mean, the left literally, they would love to fund a program, be like, you know what, there needs to be more male nurses. Let's make that happen. And there's got to be more female engineers. It's just, let people have the opportunity they have and decide for themselves.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce.
Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
Tightening the budget of the state of California because the Constitution of the state of California said he had to. It's part of his job, right? Balance the budget the way governors have to do, unlike the federal government. And the federal government kept sending in federally funded public interest lawyers who would go to court, and then the judge would say, oh, no, you have to fund these 200,000 people over here on Medicare, Medicaid, these renewed programs or welfare, and the state has to participate, and you have to do it, otherwise our state federal law says we have to do it, and these lawyers won in court, and Reagan's budget was no longer balanced. That was pretty infuriating because he's supposed to be in charge of the budget. That's what the state constitution says. He wants to be a good governor, and he thought very hard about the poor people. He just came up with a governor's solution instead of a federal civil servant solution.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
870-275-9799. Call or text that number if you'd like to contribute to the program today. Folks, I want to highlight an Arkansas business. I want to first introduce you to a guy by the name of John Miller. John's on the line with us now. He is the owner of the Riverside Cafe in Lake City, Arkansas. John, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing fantastic. So I wanted to have you on first. Talk about your business, Riverside Cafe. How long you been doing it, and what kind of led up to this moment?
Well, we've only been here a few months. We started in July. I've been in Jonesboro for a little bit and wanted to make a change. It's my dad and I are together in the business. Both of us have been in corporate restaurants for a long time. Just kind of got disenchanted with we didn't get to work directly for our customers. So we wanted to go off and do something on our own that was a little less about shareholders and a little more about people that we actually interact with every day.
That's good. That's really good. Now, the reason I got your information was because, I think we have a mutual friend in State Representative Dan Sullivan. So, he was, you guys were talking about maybe some of the issues that are important to constituents, and he was like, hey, I need to, connect, introduce the two of us, and that's another reason why I wanted to have you on the program. But Let me ask you this. What did you think? I know you live in Lake City, but what do you think about, the tax policy pushing for sales tax increases and things like that? How does that go over well with you as a business owner?
Well, actually, I lived in Jonesboro, so it was a little closer to home for me. Usually when you want more of something, you subsidize it, and when you want less of something, you tax it. So taxing sales doesn't seem to be the best way to increase. That's what Dana and I talked about. There's not much emphasis on local business in Jonesboro or in Arkansas in general. I mean, think about trying to bring in these companies from China and send money back to China. It doesn't stay in Arkansas. It doesn't stay in your local economy. It doesn't turn over. So it gets taxed one time and it's gone. Whereas if it stayed in the state, stayed in the city, then you collect that sales tax on that same dollar 3 or 4 times.
So what's the difference? Let me ask you this. What's the difference with like a local business, okay, versus a business that's, maybe a franchise, something that's like maybe more like a national chain? What's the difference there?
Well, a franchise, even a locally owned franchise, is going to pay a franchise fee directly out. So 10 to 15 cents of every dollar leaves automatically. With a corporate restaurant, it's going to be even more, corporate anything really. Whereas in a local economy, it's owned by local people. It's going to be local employees. Typically, local businesses pay higher wages. So all that money stays there, those dollars are getting spent over and over in that economy. Does it make more sense to get 2% of a dollar that goes away, or 1% of the same dollar 4 or 5 different times?
Good morning.
I see your point there. Now that's very interesting. So I mean, you this kind of hits home. I mean, when local governments are saying, hey, we want to raise sales taxes on the people. I mean, that essentially is going to get passed on to consumers, right? I mean, that's well, I mean, the sales tax is what it is. So you're saying that this is somehow harmful to maybe small town businesses, because that's kind of like the opposite of what we heard in the past.
I think it's harmful to all businesses. We hear on and on about the tariffs on China and how that's going to make us pay more money for what we buy. Well, how can that be? If it's a tax on China, China's going to pass it on to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Corporate taxes, corporations don't pay taxes. That passes through the consumer. But when you increase sales taxes, then maybe the incentive to come to Jonesboro to buy something is a little less than what it was. When we were passing the internet sales tax, how often do we hear Main Street businesses can't compete with this hurdle that the online retailers don't have? Well, the most effective way would be to eliminate the tax, I think. But obviously, if it's that much of a detriment to your local businesses, lower it. Just lower it altogether.
Interesting.
So you're
Go ahead, John.
Well, you got the Laffer curve, but obviously the argument is that we're on the wrong side of it. That we've reached a point where it's not worthwhile to pursue that avenue. So obviously the tax is too high.
Well, so let's just talk about it. So a lot of times local governments, and we saw this, you see this a lot of places, they like to compare their sales tax rates with other cities. And if their sales tax rate is lower than other cities, they seem to think that that's a bad thing, that they're somehow missing out. That there was even a opinion piece in the Jonesboro Sun a couple of days ago saying, because their sales tax increase push failed, that, Jonesboro will continue to be one of the cheapest places to live in Arkansas, and they say that that's fine if you're only looking at your utility bill, but it's not fine if you care about your kids and grandkids. That's not my argument. That was their argument. So what do you think when cities kind of start to look around at other cities and they're like, hey, we want some parity, and we're missing out on wealth we could be getting from our citizens?
Did your parents ever give you the argument that if everybody else jumped off the cliff, would they do the same thing?
Of course they did, yes.
Every situation is unique. And you can't just say that because this city has higher sales tax, this city has a pool, or this city has that. You have to look a lot more factors than that. Jonesboro, to be a city of its size, average income is actually pretty low. And I think that bears a point in what we can support financially that way. If we pass a sales tax that it makes the cost of living unaffordable for a lot of people, then we're no better off than what we were, and arguably worse, because what's the number one driving factor of crime, supposedly, is poverty, right? So let's make things a little harder on people, because somewhere else, that's a totally different situation, can afford a higher sales tax rate. Maybe. I mean, we come up with that comparison to Fayetteville quite a bit, but Washington County seems to be in a little bit of a budget crisis to the point that they're not giving raises or hiring new employees. So maybe they can't really support that sales tax either.
That's interesting thought. And I haven't ever, actually heard this perspective, at least articulated the way that you're doing. We had people in this last push to increase the sales tax, they were saying to my surprise, publicly, in public meetings, that, hey, listen, we've got, you mentioned poverty, they were saying we've got too many, $300, $400 a month rent houses, and that we just can't have that anymore because that's what's driving the crime. And I thought that was an interesting opinion, that somebody's saying the way to to end this in partly is to give more money to fire and police, but also kind of attempt to price people out of the community. I'm not really sure if that would work anyway. I don't agree with that. It comes across as extremely elitist. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and it won't work. My wife's an RN. I've got a good job. We've been married for 10 years. When we first started out, right after we got married, he was just out of school. We didn't have a lot of money. We lived in one of those $300, $400 a month apartments, and it allowed us to get on our feet, get together, buy a house, have our children, that kind of stuff, and become productive members of society. There has to be a starting point for everybody. You just can't draw a blank line and say, well, this low-cost housing is a problem and I don't like it. You may not like it, but it's hard to get ahead in the world, and you got to start at the bottom.
So you
have to have those kind of things.
Let me ask you this. Again, we're talking with John Miller, and by the way, he's the owner of the Riverside Cafe, and I have had, I'm pretty sure, John, I've eaten at, I know when you were back in Jonesboro, your food is excellent, because I've had some of it before. You live in the city limits of Jonesboro, so, I'm assuming just based on what you're talking about, you were not necessarily supportive of this tax increase, and so I'm just curious, what do you think needs to happen moving forward? There are people that, are saying, listen, we definitely have a crime problem, and we need to do something about that. What do you think the answer is?
I think the first thing that we could look at is we've got a whole host of brand new taxes. We've got an internet sales tax now. We don't know what it's going to be. We know it's going to be more than what it was. I think that if we can ordinance that, go directly to police and fire, give it a few years, see what it's going to work out at, and then come back and determine what the needs are going to be. Most of the problem that I had with the sales tax proposal is it was just completely non-specific. The idea was pass this tax for 12 years. They thought it was going to bring in about $18 million a year. They were going to borrow against that, which I don't think is a great idea when we're in an unprecedented period of economic growth, and we're in a trade war that's hitting agriculture harder than any other industry, and that's our economic force here. But then it was just for a bunch of projects to be named later. If you're going to do something like that, you just say, this is what we're going to do in phases within what we think the sales tax will bring in. So that way there's some wiggle room if there's a shortfall. It's the same thing with the police and fire. That was supposed to be $18 million a year, so they would have gotten $4.5 million roughly apiece. This is what we're going to do with it in year one. This is what we're going to do with it in year two. So on and so forth down the line, so you have some idea what you're voting on.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. They may not be as dogmatic as I tend to be about, no new taxes. I think you can get people to vote for tax increases locally if you know specifically how the money's going to be spent. And I think that I agree with you 100%. Like that, I think that's the reason it failed, is because you were essentially asking the voters to give people a blank check in terms of where it's going to be spent. Like, we'll find out how we're going to spend it later. And this was in the context of the city running a $5-6 million deficit the year before, and so we knew for sure at least some of this money was going to go to plug that hole. And now, now I understand they're going to put forth some leaner budgets because the tax failed, and you got to think that's a good thing that people. Because we did not reward the government for bad behavior, which, I mean, if you can't balance your budget, clearly something's wrong. If you've got record sales tax revenue, which you do. And I also like your idea, John, about the internet sales tax. This is all coming into local communities now, whether, I didn't support it, but it's all happening. And so if it is, people need to start asking questions about what that increase looks like and why can't that go to public safety. I agree with your idea, John. It's an excellent idea.
I'm not against all taxes. Taxes are necessary. We need a government. We wouldn't if all men were angels, but they're not. So there just has to be some accountability in where it's going. Taxes are constantly increasing, but nothing really seems to get better for anybody. So there needs to be some accountability there. Where does it go? Why do you need it to? Specifically, what are you going to do with it? Even at the state level. We need to fix our roads. Well, which roads? Where's the plan? Which roads need to be fixed? Which roads are okay? I realize that things pop up. There's going to be a lot of construction where the flooding was in the part of the state. But generally, there should be some kind of a plan that you can look at and say, okay, well, this is where that tax went, and I see things getting done. And we just don't get that. That's why they can constantly increase it, because it's a vague idea.
Last question. I mean, this is kind of a softball, but I mean, we're talking. By the way, folks, we're talking with John Miller. He's the owner, Riverside Cafe, a joint venture with him and his father. It's in Lake City, Arkansas. If the government, you couldn't run your business the way the government runs its business, could you?
I don't think so. It'd be pretty hard to say we're not making enough, so we need more customers and charge them more under the force of law.
I think exactly under the force of law. That's pretty good. I like that. Hey, well, John, I appreciate you coming on the program. I appreciate you talking to us. And by the way, this is kind of a 2-for-1, because you're a young conservative. Because you are younger than most people that believe like you, and you're also a small business owner. So I just want to tip my hat to you. Thank you for speaking out, and thank you also for taking a risk and creating jobs, and also giving people some good food to eat, sir.
I appreciate what you do too.
All right. Well, hey, I'd love to have you on again sometime. Let's keep in touch, and I'm going to be by there soon to eat some food.
Sounds great. Have a good day, sir.
All righty. Thank you. That's John Miller, everybody. Apparently, I didn't realize this. I talked to him yesterday, and we were in college together at the same time. I didn't know that. So here is we got your meme of the day, but we're going to go to break first. We're going to reset, get to that meme of the day, and then also I really do think that we have to listen to the rest of this Joe Biden rant on what's his name? Is it Corn Pop? Corn Pop the gangster. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness.
Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
To the problem, or a lawyer's solution to the problem, and that lawyer wanted to be a superstar civil rights lawyer or welfare rights lawyer or who knows what, and he was playing to a different crowd. And we have that very much today. You undermine local autonomy in order to make a national show. You're looking in a different mirror. You're not looking in the mirror of your community. You're looking in the national mirror because you want to be nationally famous, or you want to be popular in your national XYZ group. And the community, there's no regard for the community. And then the community feels empty to everyone. Yeah. And then people wonder why they're kind of Tocqueville sad, shall we say. Is that clear?
I like that. Tocqueville sad.
Tocqueville sad. Am I Tocqueville sad? Am I bowling alone this morning? I know the listeners have heard of books like Bowling Alone. That is, our community is gutted because it has no authority. And we're just a road to be traversed.
Well, I think...
by a big truck.
Yeah.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
One of the strangest things that you'll hear today. Here is very bizarre explanation. Joe Biden telling the story of his face-off with a gang of razor-wielding do-wells led by a guy named Corn Pop. I see what the tweet was doing here. So here it is. Go ahead. Listen to Joe. Joe.
I learned a lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and there weren't allowed there was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did. And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he said, "I'll meet you outside." My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There was a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, "What am I going to do?" He said, "Come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is."
By the way, pools will make communities safer.
There was a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up. He said, "You walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, 'You may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head.'" I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "No, if you don't come back." And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty.
No, I don't remember that.
And I looked at him, but I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you to get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said. He said, okay, close the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again.
Joe Biden, everyone. Joe Biden. That's a good set. That's a good tight five. Yeah, there we go. A bunch of kids. Surrounded by a bunch of kids. Oh, man, that is fantastic. What is he even talking about? What is he even talking about? Corn Pop, the gangster that, I mean, wow. You know, his teeth stayed in, so that's good. I mean, you know, that's a win. He told a story. He did get them to kind of laugh a little bit, but I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm like, is this going to land? Like, are you going to have an ending to this story? Like, you keep talking, I'm going to wrap this chain around your neck. Oh, or around your head. Anyway. Oh, by the way, that was at a public pool. He was a lifeguard at a public pool there, you know. People say idle hands are the devil's playground. We need public pools to increase safety in our local communities. And yet, that may not be the case. I mean, it just might not be the case. Also, last hour we did talk about the resolution filed to expel State Representative Mickey Gates. Check that out in hour 1 of the podcast. We're going to get to your meme of the day here in just a moment, but I want to end you with this. RuPaul, the drag queen, claims, quote, we are all God in drag. Drag is dangerous. Drag is not politically correct. Drag will never be mainstream. The deeper level of drag is all about you're born naked and the rest is drag. No, you're born naked and we're actually under the judgment and wrath of God because of original sin. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I've got to throw that in there. Repent, though. Repent. And we're created in the image of God. Exactly. But yeah, repent and turn to Christ. That's what I wanted to say when I read this headline, that we're gods. We are all God when we are in drag. What does that even mean? All right. Here's your meme of the day. Speaking of God, this is courtesy of what is this? Drink box water bottles on Instagram. It's a picture of a kid bowing his head, and the caption is Amen. And then you've got a picture of Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau says, actually, we say a people. Because amen is, that sign of agreement in the church. It's just too offensive. Yeah, it's religiously offensive that you would bring up amen, but also, why's it got to be amen, right? Why can't it be a women? Or a children, or a people. A people. That's been a people. A people. Yeah. No, actually, you got to say them all, to make everybody feel good. Like, you agree with something in church. You just got to be like, amen, a people, a women. A bi, a les, a gay. Hey, gay. Oh, man, this episode broadcast will be available up at conduitnews.com. When I encourage you guys, you can always get the Apple Podcast or the podcast on Apple. It's open your podcasting app, search for Conduit News. Same thing on SoundCloud if you got Android. And, of course, if you want to get the audio only, you can always listen to conduitnews.com if you don't have any of those apps on your phone. Folks, that's all we have time for today. We got full show. We're going to start planning right now tomorrow. And want to end the program by wishing former state senator Brian King, his birthday is today. So happy birthday, Brian King. I need to talk to him. I haven't talked to him in a while. Wonder what he thinks about some of this information that kind of trickles out about corruption in Arkansas politics. We got to end the show, not take a break. We got to end the show. Arkansas, thank you so much, and be safe. We'll see you tomorrow.